Good evening. My name is Michael Martin. I will be chairing tonight's Mill Creek Township Zoning Hearing Board meeting. To my immediate right is Scott Calhoun, board member. Representing the township, we have Matt Pouzin, Julie Maggio. Our court reporter, Cecilia Mahana, is the right down there. To my left at the table is Rich Perhax, our board solicitor. We will be taking the cases in the order in which they appear on the agenda tonight. When your case is heard, we're going to ask you to give us your name, give us your address, give us the specific reasons of what variance you're asking for and why we should consider granting it. After your presentation is made, you may be cross-examined by the board or by anybody in the audience who may have some questions about what you're requesting. After close of testimony tonight, we do have up to 45 days to render any and all decisions. Any materials you show us will be kept for 60 days in the zoning office. If you want any of those products returned to you after 60 days, you can go retrieve those from the zoning office. There was a sign-up sheet in the back. We require that everybody sign in so we have a record of who was in attendance. So if you have not yet done that, please make sure you do that before you leave tonight. All that being said, I'd like to ask everybody to stand to be sworn in, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Our first appeal is number 21-10, James Kuhn for property located at 5337 Woodward Drive, asking for a dimensional variance to construct an addition within the side yard setback in the R1 Single Family Residential District, Index 832-066. Who's ever going to give testimony on this, please come to the podium. Give us your name and address, please.
Okay, my name's Jim Kuhn, 5337 Woodward Drive. I'm asking for the variance. I want to extend my garage, which is now just a little over a one-car garage. I want to make it a two-car garage, and I want to go full 24-foot width because I have cars and I also have some equipment that I keep in the garage. So I need the width for the space there. I have approached many of my neighbors. I even have okays from my next door neighbor who's going to be impacted the most, and I also have letters if required from some of the other neighbors with no issues with what I want to do.
Do I understand this correctly that you need a 7-foot setback and you're asking to be have relief from 1.3 feet?
Yes, 15 inches, yep.
Okay.
And to your knowledge, you have no neighbors that are opposed to this?
No.
Okay. Any comments from anybody in the audience requesting this? Does the township have any comments on this?
I did receive one letter from a property owner in the neighborhood. I'll just read his comment in. It says, Mr. Puz, this letter is in regards to a variance requested by Mr. James Kuhn at 5337 Woodward Drive, Erie, as follows. My name is Sam J. Segi and am an adjacent property owner to the above. Being a Mill Creek resident at this location for approximately 58 years, I would like to express my approval for the proposed variance. Mr. Kuhn's plans will not only enhance his property, but would add value and appearance to the entire subdivision. Please enter this approval into the records. Thank you for your attention on this. Signed, Sam J. Segi, 5331 Woodward Drive.
Matthew, thank you for that, and we'll just accept that into the record and just for what its face value is. Again, just to be clear, you're asking for 15 inches, correct?
15 inches, correct.
Okay. Rich, do you have anything?
No, I just wish we'd stop using tenths of a foot and start using inches because they keep going back and forth. Not any questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. Our next appeal is 21-11, Edward Cope for property located at 4032 Allison Avenue, asking for a dimensional variance to construct an addition within the rear yard setback in the R1 Single Family Residential District, Index 451-020.
Edward Cope. I live at 4032 Allison Avenue. What I want to build is a deck. I want to cover my existing concrete pad. My children have all graduated from college and no longer play basketball in the backyard. The deck is basically 30 foot wide, 18 feet out. The variance I'm asking for is rear setback. You need to have 40 feet from the rear property line to the first structure. My deck would be 34 feet. That's where the existing concrete pad is. The deck is only 16 inches tall. I want to walk straight out of my kitchen and there'll be one step into the yard. So that's the variance I'm requesting, is a 6-foot variance to put the deck. I've checked with both neighbors on the right-hand and left-hand side. They have no objections. The neighbors across the street have no objections. None that I'm aware of that have contacted me or I've asked. It's just a standard deck. There's no electrical service. I have a hot tub sitting on the concrete. That'll sit on top of the deck. That already has an existing electrical panel on the side of the house and its own circuit breaker in the basement on the board.
You're not extending beyond the cement pad that you presently have?
No, sir.
Okay. Scott, do you have anything?
And just to clarify, I don't believe you have any neighbor issues to the rear.
No.
It looks like they've got some
No,
buffer
they've
back
got,
there, wooded area.
Wooded area for the one house to the left. She's got some woods and big trees. The neighbor on the other side, Mr. Murphy, I believe is his name, he's got some arborvitae that are probably 12 feet tall. They can't see my house, I can't see their house. And the neighbors on the side, Muldowney and Mary Bula, they have no objections.
Last question I have, there will be no covering, it'll just be a deck?
Just a
No-
deck, plain deck, composite floor, white PVC railing,
Okay.
and a set of steps in the front and one by the sidewalk on the side. One step.
So Township have any comment on this?
No, I do not.
Rich, do you have anything?
No.
Does anybody in the audience have any requests or comments about this? If not, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Our next appeal is 21-12, Daniel Levi Stutzman, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. If not, please help me. For property located at 3701 West 12th Street, asking for a variance from sign regulations to construct a wall sign in the C2 General Commercial District, index 243-010.
Daniel Levi Stutzman. I live at 450 Level Place, and representing Don Ekman and Barbara Otto at 3701 West 12th. We're looking to add a wall sign to their building. There's currently dimensional letters there that say Barbara Otto, but this new sign would be over their square footage allowance based on their road frontage. And this is part of a program provided by Napa Auto Parts for their partners. So this is a 3 foot by 18 foot sign that also has Napa Auto Parts logo on it, and then Barbara Otto's logo as well.
Where is it gonna go in location, to the front of the building? Above the windows, or?
It is going, currently there is a letters that say Barbara Auto underneath the windows on the front of the building. It's going to be replacing those, going right in that spot.
And just for some clarification, do you own this facility, or what is your relationship?
I represent the sign company that's going to be putting it up.
I was gonna get to that. You're Mr. Stutzman, is that correct?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, and who owns this place?
Don Ekman is the owner of
Oh, he's
Barbara
here?
Auto. Yeah, he's here
Would you
now.
come up and introduce yourself, please?
And the reason we're doing this is we need to make sure somebody has standing to make this request.
Yeah, if I give a variance to Mr. Stutzman, that doesn't do you any good, because you're not Mr. Stutzman. Okay.
Right.
Seriously, we have to have the property owner or a leaseholder
I'm a leaseholder.
or somebody under contract, somebody who has a right to be on this property, okay? You can have him speak in your behalf, that's not a problem.
Okay.
But the only name we have on the paperwork for this case is his, and he doesn't own anything.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Donald Ekman, the owner of Barbara Auto at 3701 West 12th Street.
And it's Ekman?
Ekman,
would you-
E-C-K-M-A-N.
And you're the leaseholder?
Yes,
And your first name, sir, was?
Donald.
Donald, okay,
Yep.
thank you.
How long is your lease?
It'll be for 2 years. We just got a new owner to the building. Joe Herbert just bought the building from George Hanks. So he gave me full permission to put the sign up, as long as it's okay with everybody here. I took some pictures to show you where the sign would be going on the building, but I have them on my phone, if I could show them to you, or?
Well, he showed us a picture of the building and where the Barber Auto is
Okay,
now, so.
all right. I heard you ask.
Well, my question, it's only gonna be these Napa graphics as shown in this drawing?
It'll say Barber Auto on the right side and then Napa Auto Parts, because I'm a Napa Car Care Center.
Okay.
If I understand this proposal correctly, this sign isn't gonna be any higher than what's, the space that's on, that Barber Auto is, it's gonna be wider.
It's just gonna be a touch wider, yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I thought.
How much wider, since it does not meet township requirements?
18 feet.
It's gonna be about 2 feet on either side wider than the existing Barber Auto that's up there.
So what are you allowed to have?
Pardon me?
What are you allowed to have?
I believe the square footage for the property is 32 square
That's on
feet.
the former.
I'm sorry?
It's right on the, Matt put it on the,
Okay.
It's gonna
So
be
you're asking for
30.
30.125.
There is already a sign by the road, I believe that uses that square footage.
Say that again?
There's a pylon sign at the road that uses, I believe all of that square footage allowance. And so this would be one on the building. And part of the issue is that when customers come in, they don't necessarily see right away that the entrance is near the back, because there's about 150 feet
About 150
between the
feet
road
from
and the building.
to the building, yeah.
One at a time, please. One at a time. Matt, I have a question. Does the sign on the road impact the sign on the building?
No, the pylon sign or the freestanding sign has a separate allowance. The wall sign has its own allowance.
Okay, so what's he allowed for the wall sign itself?
24 square feet.
24 square feet. And how many square feet
54.
are they applying for? 54?
Yeah, 54.125 square feet.
Okay. So again, you're mentioning, you're bringing up into the record this sign that has nothing to do with this. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same pages here.
Okay.
Okay. And the sign will be backlit, I see. Okay. But no LED moving signs, it's
No,
just a
sir.
static sign?
No, it's not a digital sign. It's just-
Have you talked to any of your surrounding businesses, neighbors?
Yes, they all know that I had intentions on putting a sign up, and Napa provided the sign, providing that it was installed. And the neighbor next door, the manager to the motel, didn't have anything to say against it. Kelly, that owns Harley Davidson across the street, no problems there. The tenants that live above and behind didn't have any complaints either way, so.
Is it lighted?
It is lighted. It's an LED backlit sign. Yeah, it's a plastic sign with LED lights behind it. Which the sign wouldn't be lit other than, in the wintertime when it gets dark early. But like now with the summertime, it probably won't be lit at all. It would be like the road sign.
Is
The
it
road
on a
sign comes
timer
on till
or-
10. Pardon me?
On a timer or?
It will be, yes. Yes.
Okay, and if we put a stipulation that this is only good for the requests you're making in Napa Auto Parts and Barber Auto, would that be any problem for you?
No, sir.
Anybody in the audience have any questions regarding this? The township has something.
Come on up. Yep.
My name is Matthew Waldinger, 3608 West 26th Street. I'm the Director of Planning and Development for Mill Creek Township. As the board knows, in 2018, the township enacted a new comprehensive plan, Embrace Mill Creek, and subsequent to that, we made modifications to our sign ordinance to try and address some of the comments that we heard about an overabundance of signs. I know in the past years, we've had variances in front of the board, and the board has been fairly good partner with the township in holding those standards. With that said, and in this case, we still, object on the basis of the fact that it does not meet the ordinance, but we have no stronger objection than that. We do realize that the lot is strangely shaped. It has almost a flag lot configuration where the frontage is shorter than the width in the rear. We also recognize that there's quite a distance from the roadway to the building where this sign would be placed, so we have no objections for that. I just do have one question, and I'd like to draw the board's attention to the exhibit that was submitted that shows the configuration of the sign. It was prepared by Federal Heath Visual Communications. It shows the Napa logo. On this, in the upper left-hand corner, it indicates that this is a 3-foot by 18-foot square foot sign. 3-foot by 18-foot sign. And you can see below it's comprised of 3 different panels. One on the right that states Barber Auto, the one in the middle that has the Napa logo, and then a separate color band panel on the left. That color band panel, according to this, is 3 feet by 2 feet. That's 6 square feet. Just questioning the actual need to include that as part of the signage. If that portion of the sign was not included, a smaller variance would be needed. They wouldn't need the full 30 square feet variance they're asking for. It would be closer to 24. So I guess that's my question for these gentlemen, if it's possible that that portion could be removed.
Well, it is already a fabricated sign. It's made by, provided by the Napa Auto Parts Group. So it would have to be a complete reconstruction of the sign. I believe they include those 3 separate pieces because there could be different aspects of the auto care center that it could have that it may change depending on what the customer is, or if the name of the business is different, the far right section would be different. So we wouldn't be able just to remove that from the sign per se. It would have to have a complete reconstruction of the cabinet.
This sign doesn't come in 3 pieces?
No, just the faces do. It's one single cabinet, and
So
then
you'd
there's
have to
3.
you'd have to make a custom version of this to take that left-hand portion off?
Correct.
You're
It
saying
would
you
have
can't
to.
detach it? It doesn't detach?
No, it doesn't.
Well,
It's-
are you sure about that?
yeah.
Because you're looking at each other, that usually means you're not. But okay, well, that's my question.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions and/or comments regarding this? Scott? Okay, thank you. Our next appeal is 21-13, Turf Management Services, LLC, for property located on Marshall Drive, Erie County Tax Parcel ID 33-035-0-0-015-04, asking for a variance from buffer yard requirements from a residential district to construct a warehouse in the L1 Light Industrial District, Index 278-001.
Good evening, I'm Garrett Shames, 3717 Ardsley Drive, Erie, PA. I'm the owner of Glowacki Management Company and also of Turf Management Services. Turf Management Services started about 6 years ago as a vertical integration to provide landscape and snow maintenance services to properties under management. Since that time, it's grown to the point where we provide services to mostly third parties as well. And we've outgrown our current space in Austin Business Park and are looking to expand. Our plan, as will be presented by our professional engineer, John Laird, is to construct a 4,500 square foot building, very similar in style to our immediate neighbor to the south, which is Ben Leopold. Ben's here today. And he just recently constructed for his tree business and then recently converted that to a gym. In order to make this parcel functional as a warehouse for operation, we're requesting a variance to the setbacks. The current setbacks create a hardship for us as we'd only be able to build building and parking and no exterior space for a yard that would be consistent with a warehouse for a landscape facility. We fully believe our use is completely consistent with what's in our vicinity. And I have pictures here if you'd like to review, or I could just leave them, just indicating what's there. To the north of us is the, may I approach?
Yes.
To the north is Advanced Rehab, the Plum Building. You can see into the south is Ben. So And I'll leave all these for you. Here's the lot currently as it exists. Here's looking north. Here's a little closer to the property edge. Then you'll see here our closest residential neighbor through the trees is here, and you'll see some cars. But as you get closer, what you will see on that particular parcel is that it's almost commercial in nature in what they have. There's several cars for, looks like auto repair, and they actually have a pole barn, probably around this, not much different in size than what we're proposing to put up there. So,
Let me ask, Lydia, are you gonna have any questions regarding this? Do you wanna see these photos? Yes. Okay,
Right, she needs to be able to see that.
Yeah,
if she
that's
doesn't
why
already have it.
that's why I'm bringing her into this at this point.
So from my property management background, I know the importance of being a good neighbor. It's obviously in my professional interest to do so as well. To this end, we distributed a letter, and I have a copy of it here to all the neighbors, introducing ourselves, what we were doing, letting them know about the hearing tonight, asking them if they had any questions or concerns to please reach out to us in advance or to come here tonight to discuss it further. To the best of my knowledge, nobody's contacted you, nobody's contacted us after receiving this letter. And then we will be putting a berm and arborvitae, make the area aesthetically pleasing and not imposing on our neighbors. And John will present more thoroughly that plan. And as far as a copy of this letter, would I leave this with you gentlemen, or? All right.
Well, she's entitled to see it if she
Let-
wants
let-
to, but you need to give it to the board.
Yeah, let the Township's council see it first.
Good evening, John Laird, David Laird Associates, 1557 West 26th Street. I have with me a sketch plan of the proposed improvements for the turf management project.
Lydia, you want to come up and go?
We have this.
We have,
I think we already,
no, but if we have them in the miniature, that's
yeah,
fine.
we already have that, I think.
Yeah, okay, just want to make sure. Sorry, John, you can continue now.
All right. Just wanted to point out to you, what we're proposing on the site, or what Mr. Shames is proposing for turf management on the site. There's a proposed 4,500 square foot building on the site, approximately 6,000 square foot of parking and asphalt with 9 proposed spaces. And then there's an area behind the building that would be maintained for landscape services and different things in that nature. We are proposing a change to the buffer to a 20-yard buffer. In doing so, if you can look at the plan, there's a yellow line that shows the current buffer as it exists now, the 100-foot buffer. It's dashed in, I guess, yellow if you've got a color copy there.
You said 20 yard or 20 feet?
I'm sorry, 20 feet. Sorry.
Let's get the record straight.
Sorry, Mr. Perhacs, I'm changing it to yards now.
It drives me nuts, it's 6 inches in one place and 0.5 feet in another.
And then 20 yards becomes 20 feet.
No,
That's
20
right.
goes 20 feet.
No, 20 feet. So the buffer yard, as you can see, is 100-foot, currently 100-foot buffer line, and it is denoted by the yellow dashed line on the site. So it basically encompasses almost 50% of the property, developable property would be a buffer zone. If you have any questions on the plan, I'd be happy to try and answer them. The current screening to the commercial district at the northwest corner of the property is an arborvitae row, and the intent would be to continue that look throughout the remainder of the north line and extending south along the east line to provide a buffer. Okay. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you might have regarding the plan.
Lydia, do you want to start?
Sure. You mentioned, Lydia Caparosa on behalf of the township, you mentioned that there would be a berm or a mound. How high would that mound or berm be?
We discussed 4 feet, I think, a 4-foot berm with arborvitae on top.
And what would be done with the back half of the property?
For the back half of the property, it'd be landscape supplies, materials, plants, things of that nature that would be, congruent with running a landscape business.
And how would that be stored?
Those would be organized, some things there would be, bins or areas for them, and, they'd just be contained.
Would you be constructing anything in order to store these items?
For the mulch and soil, there'd be bins, probably smaller, mafia block style areas with, to store them properly.
And, was there any intention in the future to construct anything beyond storage area back there?
No, the building, that's, at this point in time, that's why we're going with the larger building to allow for expansion and growth. We have no intent, outside of the 4,500 square feet to increase building size.
Now, would it be possible for you to store material if there was a larger buffer area, but not the, 100 feet required?
Would it be possible? It certainly would. It would definitely make the parcel a lot less attractive, just from a standpoint of you're taking up, as Mr. Laird indicated, almost 50% from the building, and then after that. So, yard space is pretty critical just for the guys getting in, getting out, loading, unloading. So it would just be very helpful to be able to use the majority of the property as compared to, a significantly reduced amount.
And what would be the minimum amount of yard space that your guys could operate under?
I would say what we have proposed.
And will you store vehicles in the back?
No, vehicles will be stored in the parking area. And a lot of the guys do take, not every single one, but a lot of the trucks are taken home at night. So the guys can get out early and, not disrupt anybody.
Those are the questions I have for you.
All right, thank you.
The board has any questions for?
I do. John, this is
Yes.
probably your best to answer this. I'm looking at the drawing, and I want to know the dimensions of this big area behind the warehouse to the 20-foot buffer, that big white space in there that Garrett just said is going to be used for storing,
So if we,
outside stuff. And
it would be approximately north-south direction, approximately 105 feet. And in an east-west direction, there's a jog in it.
Well, give me a.
So, but, just in general, I would say it's, again, 80 feet, well, if you're including the buffer, it'd be 100 feet.
No,
to
I want.
80 feet by 100, so about 8,000 square feet, approximately.
Okay, and you're saying, well, not you, but Garrett's saying that for this property to have utility for the purpose that your respective customer wants to use it for, you need that much space? Seems like an awfully big area.
Yeah, there's a lot of material, and there'll be a lot of things stored out there, and it'll give us a lot of opportunity to, effectively use the space and get in and out, and then be able to be more efficient in our operations.
Where do they operate out of now?
Right now, we operate out of the Austin Business Park.
And how much space do you have there?
We have about 3,000 square feet there. And that's part of what's prompting this. We were looking at building an outside yard there, and just, from a standpoint.
Well, you have 3,000 square feet there. Is that, how much outside storage space do you have there?
Well, there's no defined outside storage space. So we're actually renting over at Hoffman International, which is across the street. We have about 4,000 square feet over there.
Okay, so you have more than one location?
Right, currently, correct, and out of necessity.
Okay, all right, that's all I had.
Anybody in the audience with any questions or concerns about this request? Please give us your name and address.
Michael Keblish, 1304 Idaho Avenue. I'm right behind him. A couple of questions. I didn't have any idea how high the building's going to be, or the warehouse.
Ask me.
The biggest, how high is the warehouse going to be?
Defined plans haven't been concrete, but we're going to do something very similar to what Ben has. How tall the building right now? Yeah, so
Is the berm that's behind Ben's, is it going to run parallel with that? Is that what you're planning?
Hold it.
One at a time,
hold it.
please. We need-
Whoa. If somebody's talking, they have to get up, introduce themselves, so it gets on the
Or
record.
sorry, Ben, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
So you guys keep asking him to give answers, and we don't know who he is. Okay.
Sorry, Ben.
That's all right. My name is Ben Leopold. 1359 Marshall Drive is the property where I just changed from the tree service to the gym, which borders the property Mr. Shames wants to purchase.
I remember you.
Yeah, I wasn't here long ago. It's doing well so far. But, so the mound that we're talking about, that my rear neighbor here is mentioning, we have a pretty good-sized mound that was already there when I purchased the property, and it runs the entire length of the back of my property. So I think what he's asking is that same mound going to be continued along the back?
That's my question.
Okay,
Yeah,
can
and you
you
said
answer
you were
it
going to
for him?
plant arborvitae's on that.
Correct.
Yeah, so I believe the answer would be yes then.
Okay, now the second big question I got is, and we got concerns about, in March, the paper, West 13th Paper Road was logged and cut and dropped and cleared. We want to know what's going to be done with that, if it's going to be re-repaired, re-cleaned up, fixed, because we already got people on my property cutting down and going through there.
That, unfortunately, is something that's outside of the purview of this board. You're going to have that discussion with the Board of Supervisors, because as a paper street, I'm sure that is a supervisor's, and not, we're only here to talk about whether or not we should allow this to go on this particular piece of property.
Okay. and
But I do
what
want to go back to the other question you asked, and I'm going to ask Mr. Puz this question. What's the tallest building they can build there without a variance?
That would be 35 feet.
Okay, so anything up, because you asked how big they're going to build, and
Yes,
the record is indicating up to 16 maybe, but without any variances or anything, they could build a building 35 feet high according to the townships.
Okay.
That's not our intent.
Okay, and one
Okay.
last question I have is, I understand landscaping supplies. Is there chemicals? Is there other things that we need to know about as a neighbor?
That was a question I was going to ask. What do you consider the material? Is it shrubs? What are you going to be
Yeah,
storing? on
shrubs,
this
mulch, topsoil, stone, things of that nature. We do fertilization as well, but those chemicals are in inside storage.
thing? Okay, are you going to be utilizing any type of snow repellent, ice melt, or rock salt or anything that you're going to be,
Yeah, salt.
storing that on that site?
Correct, salt.
So how are you going to prevent that from being leached into the soil?
Same way we have it now. You put, a concrete base and some mafia block up, and you prevent it from getting into the soil. You create a base for it and put it down.
Okay, because I think that's where you were going with
Yes,
that,
sir.
wasn't it, sir?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Okay. No other pesticides or nothing
No,
else?
besides, as I indicated, we do fertilization, so typical fertilization chemicals, but those will all be stored inside.
Okay, those will be inside.
Correct, and that's how
I
we
see
have
a
it.
gentleman over here who may have a question, and if you're gonna make a comment, please, we're gonna need your name and address. Okay,
That was my question, sir. That's my questions.
okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Can
Thank
can
you.
I ask the gentleman, do you have no other issues with what's been transpired here as far as, are you satisfied
The
with
only
it?
issues, I never had a problem with Ben, because Ben's been a good neighbor. We were just concerned, because we talked to our lawyer today, we were just concerned about the height, what was gonna be stored, and then he proposed about the paper road, but I know that's a different issue.
Yeah.
And
Now-
so that was his concerns, of what's being stored, the hours of operation, the height of the building,
So
and that's
so
basically.
based on what you've heard, are you satisfied with?
I'm satisfied, I just wanna make sure that my back, because we sit out on our balcony, and we're able to see right into the airport, which is a luxury for us. We just don't want that disrupted, that's all.
So it sounds like you're good friends with, is it Ben, is it?
Mr. Reed?
So it sounds like if you have any problems with this group, you can talk to Ben to talk to them.
And look at the size of this guy. He owns a gym. I don't want to mess with him.
Mr. Laird and Ben fight this out. Anyhow, I deflect. Any other questions or comments regarding this? Rich, do you have? Yes.
My name is Diane Devashak. I live at 3208 West 13th Street. I am wondering, is there any more water and sewer lines going to be put through? They recently just put water and sewer through to 1359 Marshall. They had the water shut off for hours. I had no problems before that. The water's turned back on. I've got this issue. I've got that issue. My house smelled like sewer. Then it went away. More than once.
Okay. Let me again respond to your question this way. Again, that's outside of what this board can be involved with. My recommendation is you would call either the zoning office in the morning, and they can direct you to a supervisor, because again, that would be a supervisor or a planning commission item, depending upon what's going to be going on. And I believe this project would have to go through the planning commission anyhow to get approval for building permits, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of other steps beyond just getting this. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is be as actively involved with the supervisors and the planning commission and the zoning office upstairs as this unravels. So I think that's the best avenue you could take to protect yourself.
We can answer that though, if we'd like to, correct?
If you'd like to, sure.
The water was already run when Ben did it to this
Oh, so
parcel
you're
as
gonna
well, so-
tap into that?
Yeah, that's all already been taken care of. When Ben did that, with the plan of us moving forward, hopefully if we get this variance. So that's stubbed out for everything we're gonna need, and you're not gonna be disrupted from needing utilities.
Well, I'm
run
wondering
across
why
right
I was already, because every time they shut the water off, I know they were working on the sewer because the water in my toilets was gone. It was manually flushed.
We have nothing to do with that.
So the biggest thing I'm going to encourage you to do, stay on top of this project with both the developer and the township, and we're going to wish you luck. Anybody else with questions? Yes, sir.
Can I say one other thing?
If it's, depending upon what it has to do with.
It has to do with the paper street when we went through
Okay.
there.
Go ahead, Rich. The paper street has nothing to do
We
with
don't
it.
have anything to do with the streets.
Nobody, Mill Creek actually lost their rights to that street after 21 years, so there's really
We
nothing.
have no authority over streets.
Right, that's what I just wanted to say,
Any
that that's,
One more question. Is that building a warehouse or is it a single-family home?
Which, oh, excuse me, which building are you asking about?
1359 Marshall.
it's a fitness.
We're not here to talk about his property tonight. Please. No.
No.
Ben's property has nothing to do with this. It's only the potential of a new piece of property to be commercially developed. So
He had a
you can have all the
case-
sidebar conversations you want later. If there's nobody else with any question, Lydia, I know you had a couple.
I do, but I will let you defer to anybody else.
I'm going to defer to you, so I can try to gain through you some control again.
I do have some additional questions, briefly for Matt Puz and then also for Matt Waldinger, the
Okay.
township. Mr. Puz, I know I didn't advise you of this beforehand, but these are, you should know these one, I hope. For purposes of property abutting a residential district that is zoned I-1, what is the required buffer?
That is 100 foot.
And if the property, and this property is zoned I-1, correct?
Correct.
If this property were zoned C2 in an abutting residential district, what would be the required buffer yard?
That would be 40 foot.
And, the section of the ordinance that deals with the buffer is section 145-21, correct?
Check. Do you believe that is correct, though? Yes, that is correct.
And, with the buffer yard, what is the required screening?
Required screening for a buffer yard, not more than 4 feet and not more than 20 feet from the boundary line of the adjacent property.
Thank you. And I apologize, I didn't have my mic on. It's been a while since I've been here. And with respect to this particular parcel, and is there anything currently developed on that parcel?
No, it's vacant.
And the lot behind Marshall Drive, is that residential?
Yes,
And then the back, on the one side of it is also residential, correct? The front part is commercial and the other back half of that is residential?
correct. The lot fronting Marshall to the north is commercial, then it goes into residential as you go east.
And is the lot generally square or rectangular in nature?
Yes, it appears to be a regular polygon.
Thank you. Mr. Waldinger?
Yes.
And you're currently the township's director of planning and development, correct?
Correct.
And how long have you served in that capacity?
3 years.
And have you reviewed the application that was submitted by Turf Management for this rezoning, or
Yes, I have.
this variance request?
Yes, I have.
And does the township oppose the proposed 20-foot buffer
We do oppose the 20-foot buffer. Yeah, we feel that it is insufficient in light of the comments that you elicited from Mr. Puz about buffer between residential and C2 commercial being 40 feet. We feel half of that for an industrial use is a little excessive.
And to clarify, when you say you feel that half of the 40-foot commercial buffer is insufficient?
Correct.
And would the township be amenable to a 40-foot buffer zone?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you a document that my office has prepared. Have you seen this before?
Was that question to me?
Yes, that is.
Yes, I have.
And the red areas, and I will say I'm not a surveyor, and so I did not measure this with the same accuracy as, layers would do. But is the red area representing a 40-foot buffer?
Yes, it's meant to indicate a 40-foot buffer.
Okay, and that would approximately give them about 85 feet north to south, and then 60 feet west to east?
That's correct.
And would this, again, be a more acceptable compromise on the township's part?
Yes, yes.
And given the particular nature of the use, of the property, do you feel that the 40-foot buffer meets the needs of the property?
I believe so, especially for the uses stated.
That's all I have, Mr. Waldinger.
Thank you.
Can you respond to that?
Yes, can I present you a plan?
Oh, yeah, me too. Sure, or I can go stand with them.
This is a land development plan of the Leopold property to the south of our property that was done and approved in 2018. And as you can see on the east side of this land development plan that was approved, it calls out a 20-foot buffer, or 20-foot landscape strip. That helped us come up with our 20-foot continuation of that landscape buffer for our parcel that sits immediately north. And that's how we came up with that number. It seems that it was acceptable in 2018, and we're hoping it's still acceptable under the current property for our development.
And the only thing I'd like to add is, and I understand the township's concerns, obviously, if this was in a residential neighborhood, but looking in the conformity of everything there, you have to the, to the north and south of us, you have commercial uses, which are, very close to these residentials as well. And then if you look at the, closest neighbor to us, that particular property is the one I distributed the pictures of that has a pole barn on there. They have, 6 or 7 cars that look like
There's no pole barn. Sir, you can't interrupt him. Okay, if you want to say more, you can go back up.
Can
So-
I ask,
so I was thinking the conformity
is
of-
he the neighbor that has,
That's not the neighbor I'm referring to. No, I've been to, your property is not the one I'm referring to. The pictures that I submitted are the one to the, that would be to the north of you. So there's a pole, and I have the pictures to show that, there's several cars that looks like they're worked on in the yard, and then there's also, a large barn, a garage. So I understand the township's concerns. I do think, and this is very, if it was, different circumstances, different set of facts, under this circumstance and set of facts, I think this is right in conformity with what's currently in place in that neighborhood, in that vicinity.
So the plan the township is throwing into discussion is, as I understand the drawing, is about 5,100 square feet, which is roughly 3,000 square feet less than what you're proposing for your storage. What would that do to your operation?
It would make it so that we're not able to, look at this property. We'll have to look at another parcel, maybe in Fairview or another township, or, we've done a lot of survey in Mill Creek, and this is the one, if approved, most meets our needs. We'd probably look somewhere else, because in any landscape operation, of our size, you need space, you need storage. It's, efficient for the operations of getting the guys in and out. In our business, time and efficiency is extremely important. So the more organized and stacked and things you could have together, that would have an impact on that. It also has an impact on reuse. If we don't use all of our product at a particular job, it's in our financial incentive to save that and then keep it neat, organized, and pullable to go to another job. Bulk storage of stone, bulk storage of mulch obviously saves us a lot of money and cost, allows us to employ people. We started off, employing 4 people. We're now up to 14. We're a growing company and we want to continue to grow, and this will allow us to do that and be a contributing member to Mill Creek Township. If not, we're gonna, we're gonna look to have to go somewhere else, I believe, because we're just not gonna be able to be as efficient as possible, and the economics of it won't make sense.
One of the other statements you made earlier, if I remember correctly, was you said the building you're building exceeds your present needs. By how much?
About 1,500 square feet. So we're looking, this would be our home for the future. We started off, one truck, working out of the Milwaukee Management parking lot 6 years ago. And then we had the Blueberry stand on 12th Street. That was 1,000 square feet. From that time, we then grew into this space now, the 3,000, plus the 4,000 exterior. And as we continue to grow and employ more people and get more customers, we just need more space, and that's what we're looking to for the future, a home where we can be and continue to expand. We're not looking to double the size of the building or, get significantly, we're not looking to triple in size of what we currently are. And if, that did happen, then, we'd look to relocate. But as we all know, as time goes on, it's easy to double, triple, when you're smaller. As you get bigger and bigger, that's not as possible, not maybe economically feasible for us. So, this would allow us to be efficient, continue our growth, and, be able to continue doing as we have been.
Okay. Rich, do you have anything?
No.
Scott, do you have anything? Lydia, do you have anything else? Matthew? Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Our next appeal is 21-14, Deanna Kugias. How do I pronounce that? Deanna Kugias. Thank you. For property located at 2709 West 10th Street, asking for a variance from buffer yard requirements, a reduction to parking requirements, and a use variance to expand a warehouse in the R1 single-family residential district and the I-1 light industrial district, indices 854-65, 66, and 68. Yes, sir, Rich.
Well, I'll let them set up first. Before we get into any information,
What, the Vegas pictures part of the record?
couple things. Procedure. Number one, you're not really the appellant here. T-Mobile is that correct?
Correct.
So similar to the questions I asked previously to the individual who's, Mr. Stutzman, I believe it was, could you identify for the record who owns this property, leases it, or has a contract to buy it?
Yes, sir. T-Mobile owns this property.
Okay, so T-Mobile is the real party in interest. You're representing them.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's got that on record, number one. Number two, you're showing us things on a screen that looks like it's coming off of a flash drive.
Yes, sir.
Do we have copies of, hard copies of what you're gonna show us?
Yes, sir. I have copies right here. Oh, yes.
Because we need to have these in the record and have to retain them. So you're either gonna have to leave the flash drive or give us hard copies.
Yes, I can.
What, okay, take care of the board first. If you have extras, I'll take one.
We can leave a flash drive also.
No, if we have hard copy, as long as it's the same material.
Yeah.
I don't care about that.
Rich, I want to go up to back to your first question, though. Where does she have standing? We've
Well,
qualified,
she doesn't, T-Mobile does, that's why I put it on the record. She's allowed to speak for them, but when the adjudication is issued, I'm gonna identify T-Mobile as the property owner. And that's okay.
and you have the authority of T-Mobile to speak for T-Mobile?
Yes, sir, we have written approval
Okay.
from T-Mobile.
Yeah, there's a letter in the file that
Okay.
says that. Okay, so we're all square on the procedure now. And we have, you're not gonna show us anything that's not in this package?
That is correct.
Okay, so that's all we need then. Okay, now I'll get out of the way.
You're always invited to be in the way. Okay, it's your show. Name and address, please.
Okay, my name is Deanna Kujis. The address of the property in question is 2709 West 10th Street. I'm the civil engineer on this project. I work with, for EXP. I also have Earl Staffen with me, who's the project manager, and he'll be able to answer questions I wouldn't be, and also Ashley Armbrushmaker, who is the architect on this project. So please feel free to interrupt me at any point. I have a lot of information, and if there's something that I'm going into that you are not interested in, please let me know, and we can, switch topics. This is a variance request for a T-Mobile property located at 2709 West 10th Street. This is a rendering of what the property will look like once phase 1 of construction is complete. The existing conditions of the property are shown in the 2 Google images here. This is the north side of the property. In a nutshell, this is a T-Mobile telecommunications switch facility, which basically means it is a large warehouse-type facility with a lot of equipment inside, which makes Sprint and T-Mobile phones work. The current location, or the location of the site, as you can see from the aerial view, is as follows. And the zoning of the property, the majority of the property is zoned I1, which is light industry, and a small portion of the property is zoned R1, which is residential. On the north, east, and south side, the property is surrounded by industrial properties, and on the west side, we are neighboring residential properties. The current code restrictions, due to the fact that we are on the plan west, or on the plan south, which is actually west side of the property, we have residential neighbors. Due to the fact that we have residential neighbors, we have more code restrictions than a typical industrial property. So we have buffer yard restriction on the side and rear of the property, which is 100 feet from the residential property line. So we have residential property line here, and then 100 feet of that, which is represented by the red line, is the 100-foot buffer yard. So this 100-foot width is the buffer yard in which we would not be allowed to construct building or put any equipment. As you can see, majority of the building is currently within the 100-foot buffer yard. We also have the typical setbacks as well as a building setback on both sides. This front yard has a 25-foot building setback as well as this front yard. I would like to point out that currently this side, the plan west side, does not currently meet the building, the 25-foot building setback. And then we also have a landscaping strip, which is a 10-foot strip along all right-of-ways and all property lines abutting residential property. So the reasoning behind our variances. T-Mobile is currently expanding in this community, and the building that was constructed back in 1970.
Since then, T-Mobile has purchased the site in 2001, and they have not upgraded the outside of the building. They have placed their equipment inside, so some upgrading was necessary for that, and they have placed their equipment outside of the building. But since 1970, the building hasn't really been upgraded on the outside. So T-Mobile has to reconstruct the building to bring it up to the current T-Mobile standards as far as construction of the building, as well as equipment inside. Because T-Mobile is growing in the community, they need to upgrade their equipment. So upgrading switchgear means they have to upgrade supporting equipment, which includes transformers, portable generator connection boxes, generators, fuel tanks, and so on. Also, so the big reason behind why we need this variance is because T-Mobile is expanding, they need more equipment in this community. As switchgear expands, that means the supporting equipment needs to expand, such as generators. So the reason we have to have generators on site is because this is a critical facility. That means that anytime a T-Mobile or Sprint customer wants to call 911, they have to be able to pick up their phone and dial 911, and the phone call has to go through. In order for that to happen, this facility has to be in operation. So no matter what the weather conditions are, blizzard, rain, any kind of electrical outage, this facility has to be in operation, which is why we have to have generators. As we were designing this facility, we always kept in mind the fact that we are next to a residential property, and so that was one of our drivers in our design. So we were concerned of the noise for the residential properties, as well as what this will all look like. So we wanted to, in order to make sure that there's no noise nuisance, we have made the decision to put all the generators inside of the building. So because of that, we have to expand the building even further to be able to fit the generators inside. So that is, I guess, the main reason for all of these variances is because we have to have such a large building expansion to hold all the new equipment and the generators.
Does that picture, can you go back, does that picture dictate what is being expanded over the current building that's there?
It does not. I will show you how the current building footprint compares to the proposed in one of the next slides. Here, this is the proposed layout.
Okay.
So here you see where the generators will be placed. And the blue is phase 1. So that is the area of the building that will be completely demolished and rebuilt in phase 1. Green is phase 2, and that's the building that's going to be demolished and replaced in phase 2.
If you had the ability, and this is going to Mr. Calhoun's question, if you had the ability to overlay on that slide the present footprint, what would it look like?
Ashley, could you help me out with that, please?
Because I think that's,
Roughly.
I'm having a difficult time envisioning that.
Maybe one of, is this a better one? So the red dashed line represents existing building footprint. So it kind of follows like that, and all the way over to the property line, and then up. And then this kind of shows you what the red is the existing, and then what we're proposing.
I think, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Existing.
Why don't you continue through your whole thing? I'm writing down a bunch of questions. I'm sure Lydia is, and I'm sure
Perfect.
Matthew is.
Okay, great.
We have a time limit, no.
I know this is all very confusing and it's a lot, so please feel free to interrupt me at any time. Okay, so this is the proposed site plan that we provided with our variance request. As I mentioned, the red dashed line is the outline of the building as it stands now. And that will show you comparison of what our proposed is in comparison to what it is existing. You will notice that on the Plan West side, we will be meeting all of the building setbacks. So I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Since we submitted our site plan, we kept designing and we kept thinking about how we're next to residential properties and how can we improve this site in order to be more friendly to the residential area. So that means maybe placing equipment somewhere else, or maybe making the site more appealing to the eye by adding green space. So we have done that, and the site plan has changed a little bit. However, our variance requests have not changed. So one other major thing.
What did change in your plans?
Yes, I will, all right, I'll go ahead and go over that now. So the two main big things that changed is originally we proposed fuel tanks to be on the plan southeast side of the building in this area. We would like to now move them to the plan southwest side of the building over here, because that will give more space between the fuel tanks and the residential properties.
I'd like to parse this down into a little bit different. You're moving geographically a bunch of things. And as I understand it, you're looking for 3 distinct different variances: a buffer yard, a parking, and a warehouse. Is that correct?
No, there's 7.
There's 7.
Is there 7?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you go into their package, not what she handed out, but the stuff that came with the agenda,
Okay.
it's about 3 or 4 pages in, you're gonna see a letter from her that outlines 7 distinct variances.
Okay. So we're dealing with 7 different things.
Yeah.
Maybe
It's,
it's not looking too far away.
Putting what, 12 pounds in a 9-pound box or some such aphorism of.
I'm going to defer to the 2 solicitors. I'm not so sure.
I know where you're going.
That what's happening inside all the building is as important as to what's going to happen where the setbacks are being asked and where the use is going to be being asked. And I see a little smile on Lydia.
Well, part of it's relevant in a sense that what's going on inside, because part of the building's going to encroach into the residential zone. What's going on in there isn't residential use. It's some commercial activity.
Yeah.
So it's relevant in that sense, only in the sense that it's not residential. I mean, whether it's a transformer or a fuel tank or switching equipment or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Nobody's living in there, and that's the issue with the interior. The rest of the case is all encroachments of different types with different things, different parts of the development, and then a number of parking places. But the encroachments are many. There are several discrete things wrong with this in terms of the code. So that's my sense of it.
We'll let you continue to build 100% your case, and we'll try to be quiet then until you're done.
Yeah, we let people say
That
what
might
they
speed
have to
things
say.
up.
Sometimes it helps to frame it a little bit before you go on.
So to answer your question fully, the main things that have changed is we moved the fuel tanks to be in a different area of the site where it will allow for the fuel tanks to be further away from the residential property. And also this area here where we originally had parking, it will no longer be asphalt. All the area around the fuel tanks will be grass. We try to maximize green space as much as possible. And also the parking has moved from this area here to more plan south. And one more thing I would like to mention, on the original site plan that we proposed, we show the entire site being developed. Since then, we have decided to split the development into phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 2 will depend on how quickly T-Mobile grows within this community. So it is not at this time known whether Phase 2 will be in 2 years or in 10 years. So we have decided to split it into 2 different projects, and at this time only talk about Phase 1 and do land development plan for Phase 1. So to give you a bigger overview of the proposed site plan and Phase 1, what we plan to do. So this part of the building, the part that is not shaded of the building, will be demolished and replaced. Shaded part of the building will remain the same. As I mentioned, currently on the Plan West side of the building, the current building goes all the way up to the property line, not meeting the building setback. The proposed building will be meeting the building setback, and this entire area will be green space with the exception of the loading dock. And then we will be providing 6 parking stalls plus 1 ADA parking stall. On the Plan South side, we will be putting 2 fuel tanks, which are necessary for the redundant power source for the generators.
Are there power or fuel tanks there on location now?
Yes, sir. There is a generator currently located right here with a belly tank, which is 4,000 gallons.
Okay.
And then we will be putting some transformers in this area of the property, and some temporary generator boxes.
Matthew, how many parking spaces are required?
60.
60?
60.
Because of the size of the building?
Correct.
So, in addition to changing some things outside of the building, we're also changing some things inside of the building to decrease the footprint of the building as much as possible. Okay, so our variances requests are as follows. There's 7 of them, and I will go into more detail with each one once I list all of them. So variance request 1 is further encroachment of the building into the buffer zone. Variance 2, building footprint to expand further into R1 zone district. Variance 3, decrease in the required number of parking stalls. Variance 4, parking lot to encroach further into the buffer yard. Variance 5, allow installation of 2 above-ground fuel tanks in the buffer yard. Variance 6, build a sidewalk within the required planting strip. And variance 7, equipment encroachment into the buffer yard. So our variance request 1 is further building encroachment into the buffer yard. So I mentioned the required buffer yard is 100 feet from the residential property. And the building, most of the building already encroaches into the buffer yard. So in order to be able to fit all the proposed equipment and the generators inside the building, we will have to expand the building further towards the residential property by 26 feet on this side to where it's within, I believe it's 7.5 feet of this side of the property, residential property, and then 34 feet on this side of the building.
So how much will be left after you encroach the additional 34 feet?
I believe it says 48, 45. It depends on what side of the building.
Well, at the closest point, or at the point of greatest encroachment, you're supposed to have 100 feet, okay?
Yes, sir.
At the point of greatest encroachment, how much is left?
I believe it's 7 feet in this small area right here.
So
And then in this area, I believe it's 45 feet in this area here.
So at the point where it encroaches the greatest, you're asking for variance of 93 feet out of the 100 the ordinance requires.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
For variance request 2 is we're requesting for a use variance because currently this portion of the property is zoned R1 residential. So the building, the proposed building will be encroaching into residential area by 34 feet. Or residential property owned by T-Mobile.
Well, okay, so what's the extent of the encroachment now?
34 feet.
So the current encroachment into the residential zone is 34 feet.
The current encroachment, I'm not sure. It does encroach a little bit, maybe 5 feet, but the new encroachment will be 34 feet.
Okay.
So,
One.
you're presently operating in this facility?
T-Mobile is presently operating it, yes.
I guess, did up until this point, everything met their ability to run this operation in that facility?
Could you rephrase that? I apologize.
I'm sorry?
I said, could you rephrase the question?
Have they been legally operating inside this facility, I guess is my question.
Yes, yes, they have been.
And, all right, and if they want to continue doing everything they're doing, well, okay, I'm still trying to get my head around this. So there's 5 more options for us.
Well, they were, with respect to the encroachment into the residential zone, is that a non-conforming use, or was that lawful at the time it was constructed? Well, but that's the same question, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, what I mean is, well, there used to be, and I know this only because I've been here forever, but there used to be a provision in the ordinance that said if a piece of property is bisected by a zone boundary, that the zoning board was authorized by virtue of a special exception to allow the extension of either zone's regulations into the other zone, provided the public health, safety, and welfare wasn't adversely affected. And I understand that was imprudently taken out of the ordinance by somebody who rewrote it over the years. I think it's gone.
Yes, it is.
Is that how this came to be? Or was it one time zoned for all commercial or industrial, and was that part residentially zoned on top of them, became non-conforming use? One way or the other,
yes,
they built this thing that way, so.
Yes, the building currently sits in the industrial district. Their parking lot sits in the residential district.
Right. But that's part of the industrial usage,
Correct.
and it's in a residential zone. So how did that come to be lawfully there, or isn't it? If we know, I'm not, this is, you know, I don't put you on the spot, but it matters to me.
Rich, are you asking then, was it an approved variance?
Well,
Or
it could have
was
been, it could have been,
grandfathered in, or-
it could have been, or it could have been lawful at the time because the zone boundary was moved, or it could have been pursuant to that provision I just mentioned, which used to be in the ordinance. It could have been any of those things. But somehow that parking lot got, which is clearly part of the industrial usage, ended up on residential land. And the status of, the legal status of that matters to me for this case.
So I don't know if this helps at all. This building was originally built in 1970 by someone who wasn't T-Mobile. I don't remember the name of the company.
Well, that
was a manufacturing company.
yeah, well, I figured as much, but no, that really doesn't help.
Yeah.
Unless we went searching for it, which we're not gonna do tonight, so.
Was that Techno Corporation prior to your purchase?
Techno.
I don't know.
When did T-Mobile purchase the building?
2001.
Well, T-Mobile, it's a Sprint facility, actually. T-Mobile, which.
Excuse me, we do need to capture your name and address before you do any of this.
Earl Staffen, EXP, representing the property there. Address.
2709 West 10th Street.
Sprint operating the facility, and before that, other telecom companies that they purchased over the years since, I believe,
Okay.
2001. T-Mobile just brought Sprint, so.
Okay,
that's what's-
that's not helpful. My question relates, I don't care who owned it back then. My question relates to how part of this, the part of this land that's zoned residential got to be used for a non-residential purpose. That's my, I don't care whoever it was, I don't care who it
Matt,
was.
can you answer that?
At this time, I do not have the information to answer that question.
Okay, I didn't think, that you probably would. We may need to, I may decide that we need to have that, I mean, for me to do my part of this thing. Okay, well, just continue, Ms. Lee.
So our variance 3 request is for the required parking. Currently, as Matt said, we are required to have 60 parking stalls. T-Mobile does not need all this parking. They need equipment space. There will be, there's planned for 6 office spaces, so that is all of the parking that T-Mobile requires. 6 parking stalls plus 1 ADA stall. And that is because this facility is secure and only people that work there can go there. So no visitors or that type of thing. So the T-Mobile only requires 6 parking stalls, so plus 1 ADA stall, so that's all we are requesting. Variance request number 4 is parking lot encroachment. So currently, the entire parking lot is within the buffer zone as well as R1 residential area. We are asking for 6 more feet to encroach towards the residential area in order to be able to fit the 6 stalls. I would like to point out the fact that the hedge that is currently at the property line between T-Mobile site and the residential area, the hedge is very tall, maybe 15 feet tall, and you can't see through it. So even though the parking lot will be encroaching further towards the residential area, the residential neighbors will not be able to see through the green hedge in order to be able to see the parking lot or the building or really any of the equipment.
You're stating here, we asked to increase the encroachment of the parking lot by 6 feet. How much are you encroaching already?
Maybe, I'm sorry, I don't have it dimensioned out. I'm assuming maybe 30, or it's maybe 20 feet away from the property line.
Well, hold on.
So the entire parking lot is.
Rich, you have something you want to add?
Yeah. We don't deal in approximations and maybes. We can't give you a variance for approximately a 20-foot encroachment or 30-foot encroachment. It's impossible for us to tell exactly what you're asking for in terms of encroachment without knowing the existing encroachment to add the 34 feet to. Okay, there's a number missing from the calculation. We don't deal with estimates here.
Yes, I apologize for that. I should have been more clear with my drawings.
Well, okay, we may very well have you come back for that reason, depending on what disposition the board wants to make with it.
So if the parking lot would be an additional 6 feet of encroachment to the existing encroachment.
But we don't know the existing. That's my point.
So variance request number 5 is to place above ground fuel tanks within the buffer yard as well as within the residential zoned property. Originally, in the site plan that we provided you, we placed fuel tanks on the southeast side of the building. We felt like that was too close to the residential area, even though it was originally placed in the industrial zoned property. we felt like it was too close to the residential property lines, so we made the decision to move the fuel tanks to the southwest side of the building, so they are, more than 20 feet away from the residential property lines, but now they are in the residential zone area as well.
And I think it's going back to the previous question. You want to place them in a buffer yard. Again, what type of relief are you looking for to do that?
So, the above-ground fuel tanks are new as they are. We do currently have a generator with a belly tank here, so that, I apologize, I do not know how far it is from
Well,
the property line.
Well, on your to-do list, you want to add, we'll have to know how far into the buffer yard the proposed tanks encroach. You're supposed to have 100 feet, okay, and you're going to put a tank somewhere in that 100 feet. So I need to know how far into the 100 feet at the farthest point the tanks will be. We need to know that.
Okay, so the tanks will be 22 feet from the property line, so the buffer yard is 100 feet, so we're seeking 78-foot relief from the buffer yard.
Okay.
Actually, you're supposed to have 100 feet. And you're already inside the buffer.
Yes, so I'm not sure how you want to consider this. These are standalone above-ground fuel tanks. We do have currently a generator on site that is within the buffer yard, and it has a belly tank. So it does have fuel, a fuel tank. So would you consider that to be the same type of system? And then we would be seeking additional relief to, you know, this is within the buffer yard, it's within a certain distance from the property line.
We generally, if you're talking about encroachment into the buffer yard, we generally take the point of the greatest encroachment. The close, you're supposed to have 100 feet with nothing in it.
Mm-hmm.
So you put some things in it. How far into the buffer yard is the farthest distance any of the stuff is? That's generally what we consider your request to be. And that's how it's assessed.
Okay,
So you told me that was 22 feet.
So it's 22 feet from the property line,
Yeah,
so the,
78-foot encroachment.
yes, sir.
Now, it's not, now that 78-foot of encroachment doesn't cover 100% of the area.
That is correct.
But at its farthest point of encroachment, it's within 22 feet of the property line.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's the information I think that we want. That's generally how we evaluate this.
Okay. Variance request number 6 is a sidewalk encroachment into the planting strip. So because the building will be expanded towards the property line, we would have to place the sidewalk within the planting strip. So, and the sidewalk is provided so that the employees of the facility are able to walk from out of any door towards any piece of equipment. So the sidewalk would be with 4 foot wide, and it would be 3 feet from the residential property line. So the encroachment would be 7 feet into the landscaping strip.
Can I go back to 5 for a quick minute?
Oh, yes, sir.
You're saying you want to put 2 above-ground fuel tanks in the buffer yard.
Yes, sir.
What's the capacity of those tanks?
25,000 gallons each.
So you have 50,000 gallons you're talking about putting there. We presently have a generator with a 4,000-gallon belly tank.
Yes, sir. So this, as Earl mentioned, this was a Sprint site, and T-Mobile purchased Sprint, and now they're trying to expand and maximize the space. And for that, they have to have the generators and the fuel. So, and the final variance request is number 7. It's for equipment encroachment. So we currently have equipment on site. There is a generator on the southeast side of the building. Plan west of that, we have temporary generator boxes as well as transformers and temporary generators. On the more plan west of that, we have condensers. So there is currently equipment on site on grade. We will be putting as much equipment on top of the roof as possible. So all of the proposed condensers will be going on top of the roof. However, transformers and temporary generator boxes have to go on grade. So we're requesting a variance to place the transformers and temporary generator boxes on grade.
Okay, going back to my previous question then, what's your requested relief for the encroachment?
So the furthest point of encroachment, is 40 feet. So 40 feet away from the property line, so encroachment would be 60 feet into the buffer zone.
Okay. Okay. Do you have anything else at this point you'd like to add?
Yes, I would like to go back to the original rendering that I showed. This is what the site will look like from the north side. We will be keeping the hedge, which separates T-Mobile property from the residential property. So, and this hedge is completely, you can't see through it at all. Also, you will see where the fuel tanks will be located. We will have a screen wall in front of them to hide them as much as possible. We will also add as much green space as we can, apart from the loading dock and the required parking, everything else will be green space. And also the condenser units that I mentioned previously that will be going on top of the roof, and we will also be screening them to match the building and make the entire building more pleasing to the eye. I believe that's all we wanted to mention, and we'll take questions.
Before we get into a whole bunch of things, because I'm sure the attorneys are going to ask a bunch of questions and people in the audience, I guess I have a couple of questions. What happens if these aren't granted?
So we can do a few things. Earl, did you want to talk about this, or?
Can we address what he just asked more specifically, if any of these?
Okay, each one.
No, let's say we didn't grant any of your requests. What would you do?
Well, as I mentioned, this is a Sprint site, and T-Mobile bought Sprint, so they're looking to upgrade the equipment in the space. So they would, and well, the facility doesn't meet T-Mobile's requirements for generator backup, for in case of an emergency. So all that has to be looked at. And if we can't do this, we basically have to go back to the drawing board, see. If they said, well, no, we just have to work inside the existing building. Unfortunately, the existing building doesn't meet their requirements, so we'd be looking at tearing off sections, of the building and coming back here to try to get it, as Deanna mentioned, we're already inside the buffer zone with the existing building. So we just have to go back and revisit their growth plans, and
So basically, they don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. We really don't know.
That's fine.
That's an
Yeah,
okay answer.
So,
Thank you.
All right,
again,
thank you.
let me ask this question. Where is T-Mobile servicing this area from presently?
Out of this facility.
Oh,
But
Prior to T-Mobile purchasing Sprint?
that's a good question. I don't know if I know that answer.
Because obviously
yeah.
T-Mobile's been in this market.
Yeah.
All this redundancy had to exist prior to coming here tonight and buying this facility. So where was it serviced from?
I do not know that answer.
Okay.
Yeah. But I know this is a site that they own. They might have a lease site somewhere, and they're looking to move into this one because they own the property. But I don't know exactly.
Okay, I'm going to now let the township and the solicitors take some swings. You've answered a couple of my key questions.
How many parking spaces are currently on the property? I'm not sure, but I can count.
I'll point out that when Sprint was operating, they had salespeople on site, multiple, and right now it's operating with one technician. They need one right now.
But currently, there's not 60 parking spots. Right. It's 48. There's 48 there currently? Yes.
So like I said, they had salespeople in the office at the time.
No, I'm sorry, it's 28. I don't know where the other 20 came from. I apologize.
all right.
I'm going to defer my questions at this time. I have Mr.
Oh, sure. Do you want, Mike, you want to take like a 5-10 minute break?
Yes. Let's,
Yeah, she wants to talk to, yeah, I think it'd be more efficient if you let her confer with her client. So we might as well just,
and if you guys want to huddle, we'll take a 5-minute break.
yeah, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess.
Everybody can huddle,
Don't go far.
figure out where we're going.
There
can
she is.
provide, sorry. I can provide some of the information that I wasn't able to before. I
Okay.
did pull up our plans.
What would that be?
So for the existing encroachment of the parking lot,
Hold on. Existing encroachment of the parking lot. That's 4A. Okay, I'm on the right page. Go ahead.
the existing encroachment of the parking lot is 17 feet from the property line. I'm rounding up. 17 feet from the property line. So the entire parking lot is currently within R1 zone, zoned property. And the relief that we're seeking is an additional 4.7 feet, so 5 feet. So it would be
4.7 feet, not 4 feet 7 inches.
4.7 feet.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right,
From the existing.
thank you.
I apologize. What was another question that you had for me that I wasn't able to answer for encroachment? For the equipment?
Let's go back
I
to
think
Tanks.
tanks, yes.
I think it was
But
the-
let's go back to this issue though. You're presently in an area where there should be a buffer zone, correct?
That is correct. Most of the building is currently inside the buffer zone.
So you're saying you need an additional 4.7 feet, but you need,
For the building,
no, for the parking.
for the parking, additional 4.7. From,
So, but your written testimony here, the encroachment of the parking lot by 6 feet, you want to increase, so is it 6, 4.7, or something beyond those two?
I'm sorry, so the existing parking lot is roughly 17 feet from the residential property line.
Well, let's start with the term, the buffer yard setback would have to be what?
100 feet.
Okay.
I apologize, this is also confusing because there's the buffer yard and then we're also inside a residential zone property.
We're in the same state of confusion, that's what I'm trying to bring it to. So you're required to have 100 feet no matter what happens.
That is correct.
Would you have 100 feet anyhow? You'd never have 100 feet, would you?
We would never have 100 feet.
So what part of this could become a pre-existing condition that predates any ordinances? Does any of that apply to any of this?
Well, this is non-conforming. I mean, so the question asked earlier was how did it get that way?
And I think we have an answer.
Yeah,
Yes, after reviewing the file with Attorney Caparosa, it determined that was legally installed. The parking lot was legally
okay.
installed.
So there's nothing unlawful on this property currently.
Correct.
Everything that's there was lawfully installed, and some subsequent zoning made some of this problematic.
Correct.
Were there
So
any
it's a non-conforming
variances
use.
granted along the line?
I'm sorry, my
Were there any variances granted along the line, or was it all done with building permits and stuff?
No, there were no variances that we have on
Okay.
record.
So it's a non-conforming use in a number of ways. A non-conforming use meaning that it lawfully exists, it was lawfully constructed or installed at the time it was created, and in some subsequent revision of the zoning code applicable to the property rendered it inconsistent or in violation of that, but it has a legal right to continue to exist because at the time it was put in, it was lawful. That's a non-conforming use. Okay, so that accurately describes what exists on this property, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what they really want to do here is, in a number of ways, modify that non-conforming use to make it, shall we say, to increase the degree to which it offends the current regulations. by
Correct.
encroaching further into buffer yards than it now does, which is not to say that the current encroachment is unlawful, because it has a right to continue, because it's a non-conforming use.
Correct.
And we have to get our arms around the specific degrees to which and manners in which the property owner proposes to change those inconsistencies with the code. Okay.
Now, let me ask another question. This property was purchased in 2001.
Mhm.
The zoning laws changed when?
Oh, many times.
I mean, how many times have the zoning laws changed since 2001? And I believe they have, that 100-foot buffer has changed since 2001, correct?
I think
You can go
so.
back to non-conforming.
Yeah, I think so. My memory tells me yeah, but I'm not positive.
Give me one moment.
Because that was tinkered with by, I know Supervisor Morgan was very enthusiastic about that.
Which is all part of the Embrace Milk Creek idea. but
Right,
that whole idea
right,
is-
right. Yeah, there was a whole package of stuff that changed. After the massive rewrite, you know, when the whole thing was redone.
Okay. So prior to the mid-90s, I don't have the exact year, but mid-90s was when the buffer section was added to the zoning ordinance, and it looks like it was last amended in 2016.
Right.
So what was it when they purchased the property?
That would have been under the mid-90s. I don't have that ordinance in front of me. I can't give you that answer.
It might be something we might want to delve into,
I think I have all of the numbers.
the old numbers.
No, I mean for what they're asking for.
Okay.
I think she's got it all in here in one place or another. The reason this is important to explain to everybody, the reason why we're fussing over these numbers is because when we issue a decision in a case of this nature, we have to be very specific. If we're turning it down, we don't have to be so specific. But if we're granting it or any part of it, and each one can be considered separately, we're obligated to be very, very specific about what permission we're giving the property owner in terms of deviating from the ordinance. And it can't be, you know, about 10 feet or estimated this or estimated that. It has to be very, very specific. And that's why we're concentrating on things that may seem like details that aren't that important. Maybe from the standpoint of developing the property, they're not that important, but from the standpoint of the mission we have, they're very important. That's why we're doing this.
I understand. I apologize. This is completely my fault. I should have had all the numbers for you, and I apologize. But I do have the site plan pulled up, and I am able to measure anything that we still have questions about. I can measure the dimensions.
Well, the site plan is in our package, is it not?
Yes, sir, but any of the dimensions that I missed, that I did not include, I can measure them.
If I were skilled enough, smart enough, could I calculate them myself from the site plan?
Yes, you will be able to.
Okay, which is not to say I wouldn't ask you to help me, but nonetheless, the point being though that we want to get out of here tonight with the record closed if we can. We don't want to make you come back, and we don't want to have to do a do-over on this hearing. So we need to have in our possession when this hearing ends, all the data that we would need to have to calculate this, even if we're not really good at calculating it ourselves. Okay.
Now I'd like to go back, and maybe this has been asked and answered before. 2A, where in order to have enough space inside the building for generators, we asked further encroaching into the area of the property that is currently zoned R1. I don't think we've asked what that further encroachment is.
So this is,
Which one
the
is-
same.
I'm on 2A.
This is variance number 2?
Variance 2, the letter A.
Use variance to allow the building footprint to expand into the R1 district? That's number 2.
That's 2, yeah.
No, I've got that. Current encroachment into residential is 5 feet, correct? Isn't that what you just said?
Yes, sir, but I can double check and I can.
And you want to go in 34 feet? out of the 100.
So
Or
for
no.
a portion of the building, yes.
Oh, no, no,
but-
no, no, this isn't the 100-foot buffer yard. This is the amount that goes into the residential zone.
Gotcha.
You now go 5 feet, according to what you said, what I wrote down,
Yes, sir.
was you now go 5 feet into the residential zone, and you want to go 34 with respect to the building. The parking lot is all in the residential zone, but the building expansion would go an additional 34 feet. That's what my notes show, you said.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't have that, I had a question, but I didn't have the answer written down, so thank you.
Yeah. I have a, I have a question which may be difficult for you, but I'm just anticipating that the board's going to reach the point where they want to answer to this. You've asked for 7 discrete pieces of relief from the zoning ordinance.
Yes, sir.
7 specific things. One conceivable outcome of this case is that the board could decide to approve some, but not all of what you asked for. And I'm thinking that it would be useful for the board to have an idea of which of these things are so important to you that if you didn't get the relief, you couldn't use the site. You'd have to go elsewhere, or you would go elsewhere. And which of them could you work around? Now, that's a big question, but it may very well be a relevant one. I just throw it out there. You don't have to answer it, you don't have to try to answer it, but I know my board pretty well. And they're already thinking about this. Well, because the scope of your request is broad. Usually we deal with cases where there are 1 or 2 very well-defined things that somebody needs to get relief from, yes or no. But you've got a plate full of stuff. And not only could they approve some but not others, they could approve part of what you want, not all of it, within each one of the requests, because I don't know that they'll parse it that closely, but those are all possible places where the board could go when they deliberate on this. And so I throw that out before we close the record for whatever anybody wants to say about it. You follow me? I mean,
Yep, and I think he's ready to.
I know you're already thinking of it, yeah.
I mean, really, they're all related to each other, and it may be the parking lot encroachment, we can look at, and also the sidewalk encroachment, would be something that we could, design around, but everything else is really related to.
Okay, well, fair enough answer.
To each other.
Okay, like I said, I don't want to put anybody on the spot.
I guess my concern is relative to the neighbors and the neighboring businesses and residential is the installation of 50,000 gallons of fuel tanks.
Yeah, we haven't heard from the neighbors yet.
We'll get there.
But
No, you all get to talk.
If any alternate plans could there be for something like that? Given the fact that you probably need them.
Yes, the fuel is, one, will meet all codes, that's what we were talking about tonight, the fire code and everything else, will meet all those requirements. The fuel is, as Deanna mentioned, is a requirement for the generators to provide the backup power, in case of storms, so, that is, it's crucial to the site and how it's operated. There's, the engine there with a fuel tank on it now.
That's fine. Let me ask Matt Walden maybe this question. What restrictions, if any, does the township have on fuel tanks being on the property? Because I'm sure you're going to come to this point at some point in time, so I thought I could have a
Yeah, actually, you know, as he mentioned, it would be more so the fire code and the building code that has those, and those are usually reviewed by BIU. So this would have to be submitted, obviously, to them as part of the land development process. That would, you know, was the previous appeal, that would be the next step to this. If these variances were approved, they'd still have to go through the township's land development process, approval of all codes and code checks. So I don't have that answer for you at this time, but.
So theoretically, we could approve, and I'm not saying we are, we could approve all of these. The BIU or the township or some fire code or something could say you can't do any of it. Have you checked any of our ordinances or codes or anything along that line to see where you fit?
Yes, sir. We have been in communication with the fire department. On our previous site plan, they did not have any comments regarding our fuel tanks. They said as long as they can get around them to put out a fire, they're fine with it. The fuel tanks do meet the 20-foot, the way fuel tanks are placed now on the site plan, they do meet the required 20-foot setback from the property line and 5-foot setback from the building. So the fuel tanks do meet fire code.
Okay.
One thing I want to mention is T-Mobile inspects all their equipment, all their fuel tanks, generators on a regular basis. So monthly. So we do not, I mean, they have generators and fuel tanks at every single site that they.
So that begs my previous question that nobody could answer. Where are you presently servicing this area from? And if you don't have an answer, that's fine.
I can't.
But it's gonna weigh an awful lot for me.
But yeah, we can ask that question.
Yeah, but if I close testimony tonight, I can't take any of it. If we close testimony tonight, the record will be closed.
Well, we could leave it open too.
But we have choices.
Yeah.
You've answered my question, Matt. so-
Thank you.
Do the solicitors have some more questions?
I
know
don't.
there's-
I don't.
You don't right now? So I know there's some people in the audience patiently waiting. And if we could at least let's get your name and address and comments and things.
So my name is Nia Motzer. We're neighbors. That's my backyard. That's my house. I bought my house. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. I bought my house in '07, and so my daughter could go to school at Mill Creek. When I first moved in, it was like quiet. It was great. It has become louder with air conditioning, the large generators, the fuel tanks that are literally like 5 feet from my house. When they decided they wanted to put their fence up, which was like from here to here, here's the fence, here's my house, I measured like the numbers, I didn't measure, I'm sorry. It's large, it has a barbed wire fence at the top, it kind of looks like a penitentiary fence. And not just with Sprint, that whole community has become more industrial, and I feel like I'm being pushed out. My daughter's graduated from high school. I've been spending the last 2 years upgrading my home, and now I'm scared to death that I'm not gonna be able to put this on my house. I'm scared that I'm not gonna be able to sell my house because of how commercial it has become. Across the street from me was Arvite, is expanded to Metalworks. From 5 in the morning till 2 at night, there's semi-trucks pulling in and out in front of my house. There was a tanker that spilled 25 gallons of diesel on my front yard in 2016. I couldn't be off a year. This is just making my heart race. I'm concerned, and I guess I want to put a proposal out to you, and I've talked with some of the neighbors who couldn't make it tonight. Would you like to buy my property? I know this might not be the place, but
let me just stop that because you guys can have that.
I know, but I knew that was going to happen, but I'm going to throw it out,
Let me get control of this again a second. Let me ask this question now. Are you opposed to this board granting these variances? And you're the adjoining property owner?
Yes, I'm yes.
I mean, can I clarify? You already live there. It already looks like hell. It's actually gonna look better. There's a few encroachments and whatnot. How is that worse than what you currently have?
It's become more industrial than residential.
What do you mean by it? This
The
property?
neighborhood.
This
My property specifically, because that's the one that's being
Okay.
affected.
But specifically for this variance request, that property, as it stands, does not look appealing.
Excuse me?
That property currently
No,
stands,
this
does
one.
not look appealing.
To me, their building doesn't look appealing, or my building does?
Their
No,
building.
theirs.
Their building.
It's surrounded by a fence. It's not gonna matter. You know, like right now, they can do whatever they want on their
Well-
side. You're not gonna, you know, it's,
Aesthetics
well-
aside, aesthetics aside, you're, so in support or opposed to variances being granted to this property?
I'm opposed.
She's supposed to.
Okay, good. Again, all the reasons and everything else,
Yeah.
really, she has rights.
Right, and the fuel tanks, I get that they're still gonna be very close to my backyard.
You don't have to explain all your reasons.
Thank you.
can say you're opposed.
I'm opposed.
And we accept that into the record.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Does anybody have any questions of her, though?
I'm sorry, could I clarify a few things? I apologize, this is your house right here? Yeah. Okay. I just want to clarify that for phase one, we'll only be doing, work on the west side. So this is her house right now? And the work we will be doing is, for phase one is just the planned west side of the building. This will all be phase two, and as of right now, we're not seeking variances for this.
Yeah, all of your variances are related to phase one.
Yes, sir.
You understand what she's saying?
So it's not.
Everything you're doing is on the other side of the property from where your house is.
Right, and my concern right now, already as it is, the floodlights are really bright, they shine into the back of the house. The air conditioners are really loud at night, especially in the summertime when it's open, it's all I hear.
So let me ask one other question. You presented testimony you're gonna do phase one, phase two. You don't know when phase two may happen. It might be 6 months from now, it might be 10 years from now. So there is a phase two in your plans.
Yes, sir.
And in which case you'd have to request additional variances.
Well,
For all the same reasons, we would assume.
A few variances will have to be requested, yes. No, so in phase two,
And you have an idea what phase two would be right now as it appears on the board.
yes, sir. So this will be the overall plan. So the west side is plan west is phase one, plan east is phase two. So starting roughly right here, this will be phase two. So we will not need additional building variances, but we will be again requesting parking variances if that is something that's required. As of now, I believe that's probably the only variance we would be requesting at that time.
And going back to the neighbor's comment, you have this place pretty well lit up at night?
I don't know. We'll drive by. We haven't seen it.
So you're not familiar with the property, so you're.
I mean, we've been there a few times, but not at night.
My question to her is though, and I'm going back to, if this might help her, as opposed to her feelings that it's hurting her, would she be opposed to it? Because by virtue of what I'm looking at here, the tanks are moving further away from your house. The lights and the facade and the stuff like that that's getting handled on the west side is enhancing everything. I'm just trying to determine if it would benefit you versus not.
Yes, I would like to point out one more thing, if I may. So these tanks are going to be over here now, and the generator that's currently there, it won't be there in phase two. We'll be removing that generator in phase two, and actually all our generators are going to be going inside because we know it makes noise. We know we're next to residential property. We don't want you to deal with it. So that's why we're putting all the generators inside. So generator noise is going away. The condensers, the cooling units are going to go on top of the building over here. So, they're currently here, we're moving them over here. And then the only expansion towards this side would be the building. So this portion.
We're moving all the condensers.
Yes, so actually over here, there won't be any equipment except for this. Actually, no, this transformer won't even be there. So as of now, as of our current plans, there won't be any equipment here at all.
And the air conditioners that are on the next square over.
So that's also a transformer that make much noise, yeah.
I'm sorry, that's what?
A transformer?
It does not make much noise.
Matthew Wallinger, you have a comment or statement?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to point out at this time, because it directly affects the resident that just spoke. In conversations with the Board of Supervisors about the potential for this variance, their concern and something that we spoke to T-Mobile about was the property line that's adjacent to this resident's property. Currently, there is the arborvitae hedgerow to the northwest along the property where the parking lot currently exists. There, and then it goes east through that property line. The supervisors have requested that T-Mobile would plant a similar hedge along the entire west property line, so covering the section that's adjacent to this woman's house, as well as make any fence that is along the residential area a privacy fence so that it's opaque and can't be seen through.
Flooding is often an issue in the neighborhood too, because it was once connected to the viaduct, and since that has been, our parking lot was added, it results in flooding in my backyard, which then results in flooding in my basement. I'm sorry. I guess my one more question I had was also an issue that isn't, regarding flooding in the backyard. It used to be that neighborhood was connected to the viaduct there, and because of this already, it's been disconnected, and it often results in flooding in my backyard, as well as my basement.
Yes, ma'am. We would, actually, this is the parking lot that you're referring to.
Yeah, there used to be like a viaduct, and it used to run out to that result. Since that's changed, it results in flooding in the backyard, and it creates issues in my basement.
Okay, so our current plan for phase 1 is to actually make this entire area green space, so that will, that should resolve your flooding issue if it's coming from this area. Apart from the equipment that will have to be on concrete pads and the fuel tanks, the rest of the area will be grass.
Does T-Mobile look to see if there's any other suitable property we could purchase or locate this at?
I don't believe so, no. Like I mentioned earlier, they own this site, so.
Well, again, yeah, but people own things, but when you want to change the dynamics.
You're exactly right.
Okay. Lydia, you look like you have some questions.
Well, and not so much questions, but just following up on Mr. Waldinger's comments earlier concerning the supervisor's position with respect to the property. For your reference, we did prepare a document identifying what the supervisors would like to see along the residential property lines.
And does this take in consideration what she is?
Yes,
Looking for-
as Mr. Waldinger indicated, and I'm sorry, gentlemen, let me provide you all a copy.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this.
The yellow on the document is the existing hedge that has currently been installed on the property. The blue line, as Mr. Waldinger indicated, the supervisors would prefer that the fence be a privacy fence. I know the hedge is very thick, but that can change over time. But be a privacy fence along the residential side, and that is the blue line. And that's based on where the fence was identified based on the drawings previously provided. And I apologize, it's a little difficult to see, but there's also a green line on there, and that would be the additional hedge on the residential side that would be behind your house. I assume that's your house. You're down here?
That looks like it's gonna run, so I'm looking at this, and this looks like the blue line would be where the fence is, and the green line is mounted. I don't know where you're gonna put a hedge in there.
The hedge would be on the property line, and then the fence would be behind that.
I guess, I'm thinking this is my house right here, right?
Correct.
And this is between, there's like literally like 3 feet where.
Again, you guys
Whoa,
speak up.
whoa, we can't do it this way.
I guess I'm wondering where that hedge is gonna fit, because like, here's my house, here's the fence. Are you gonna put it on your side, on the opposite side of the fence, on your side? 'Cause I don't know where, 'cause it would.
So we would move the fence. We would put, the hedge, I'm sorry. So we would, I know the
That's what this shows.
I guess I'm just wondering, it seems cool, but I'm just wondering what that would really mean for like, you know.
So if that helps at all, this is what the hedge looks like on the other side.
That's behind, yeah.
Yes. So we would just, you know, put in
Now, Lydia, this says hedges, but that doesn't explain what a hedge is. So,
No.
if we were to, and I assume you're asking the board to incorporate this into its decision, should it approve?
Should it approve the
So-
variances, we would request that, and I recognize that hedge is not defined, but would request it would be very similar to the type that is currently
Similar to what-
installed on
Okay.
the currently existing hedge.
Okay.
That can literally only fit like a lawnmower between my actual existing house and the fence. But I think there's something that would
Okay, so we see one thing. So what is the total position of the township on this request? Are you in support of it? Are you opposed to it? Are you supportive of it with revisions? Or are you?
I guess we take no position on it other than requesting that, you know, if you see fit to grant it, that you include this, the fencing and the hedge requirements in your approval.
So all the statements about embrace Mill Creek and make sure the buffer yards and the setbacks and all that stuff don't apply to this application?
I'm conveying to you what the two township supervisors have conveyed to me.
That's fine.
And I hate to keep going back to the young lady back there, but based on some of the information that has since been learned, do you still oppose the changes or not?
I don't wanna be that person, but I kinda do.
You're entitled to
Yeah.
oppose it, you don't have to explain it.
Okay, I oppose.
Then again, you don't have to answer any of these questions from now on if you
It's
don't want to.
hard for me to kind of like picture, like, it sounds great, but like, what does it really look like? And I guess I don't want to say yes and like, it's turned out like.
I can't see this from my front porch, but you can see it from yours.
Right.
It's much more important for
Yeah,
you.
no, I oppose.
Okay.
And if I may, a point of clarification, I think it was stated earlier that the variances that are being sought are only for phase one, but it was my understanding from reviewing the packet that the variances requested impacted the entire phase one and two. Am I incorrect?
So right now, we're only requesting variances for phase one. I apologize for the time to submit the packet.
Okay.
If, you know, we provided it in just phase one.
So and I just want to make sure I understand what we're getting variances for, regardless of whether or not the township has a position one way or the other. So the 7 variances here in this presentation are different than the 7 in the packets you provided, or are they the same?
They're the same, however, some of the equipment location has changed, so.
Okay.
Probably the numbers that I provided are,
In the packet?
yeah.
Okay,
I'm using this.
that's perfectly fine.
I apologize.
As far as I'm concerned, this is what's being asked.
Okay. That's what I just wanted to confirm.
That was my sense of it.
Okay.
Again,
One last thing, I'm sorry. I guess if I could see, like, the front of it looks great, but I guess I would need to see pictures of what it actually is going to look like on my property for me. Like, maybe I'm not visualizing what you're visualizing, but like right now it already kind of sucks. Sorry. And so like I would need to see more visuals to kind of see in print and measurements and proximity what that would really look like. Thank you. I do, I'm sorry.
You need to slow
I guess what
down.
I'm saying is that I would need to see more renderings to see a final outcome to know what to really expect. I'm only seeing like what
We
the
have
front of the
what we
building is
have.
going to look like. I'm sorry.
All we have is what we have. Okay, if you want more renderings, we can't help you, because we don't have any more.
I'm not exactly expecting you to produce them now, but I'm saying moving forward.
Well, okay, that's, yeah, we don't need to
Okay,
to
I'm just
go
putting
on
that
there.
up.
Just for the record, though, if we close this record tonight, we can't take any additional testimony. And again, we can only go on what's presented to us here tonight. And there's, you know, some things that are very complicated.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I want to reiterate one more thing. We're only, for phase one, we're only doing things on the west side.
in my opinion, one of the keys to this is that you're asking us to consider something that has an impact on your property and neighbor's property today with the full knowledge that someday you're gonna be asking potentially for another impact that may completely change everything. So without really knowing what you're looking at for phase two, again, to me is incomplete information. But again, we'll deal with that. Lydia, do you have anything further?
Only one more point of clarification. I know we've been referring to the property owner as T-Mobile, but I believe it is Horizon, for purposes of the record. It is according to, I'm sorry, let me flip to the correct page. It is Horizon Personal Communication. Horizon, not Verizon, Horizon, Personal Communication. Per the Erie County tax assessment documents that are attached to the petition that Mr. Puzz prepared, that indicates that Horizon Personal Communication is the property owner.
Personal
Horizon,
Communication.
correct.
So is there
Do
standing
you
then?
identify them as the property owner? This is why you need lawyers, okay? To be perfectly blunt, okay? Because we can't even identify who owns the place.
So, from our understanding, Sprint owns Horizon.
Again, we understanding is one thing, but.
That doesn't matter.
So we've started with the fact that maybe Sprint owned this once and T-Mobile, and we've been talking all night that T-Mobile's a property owner, but Lydia, what you're presenting now is
Yeah,
land.
where are you getting that from, Lydia?
In
Property records?
From the property records that were attached to the petition packet that Matt provided to you all.
Okay, those are part of the packet.
It's part of the
All right,
packet.
so they're in the record.
They're in the record, and it refers, I just,
All right.
to point
So
that,
is it-
All right, I will identify them as the property owner.
yes. And it indicates that the date of sale was March 30th of 2001, which is
Okay,
consistent with the timing.
thank you.
So that qualifies for standing.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
I'd hate to have wasted the last 2 hours without
Be
seeing.
nice they told us, you know.
Sorry.
Okay, is there any other testimony that anybody would like to grant? Any other questions or comments? You're willing to close the record as is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Our board will take a short recess to make hopefully some decisions. And again, we have up to 45 days after close of testimony. We've closed testimony on everything tonight to render in any and all decisions. So if you want to wait around to see what we make as a decision tonight, we shouldn't be long. Julie, you ready? So you ready? Okay. Let the record reflect at 9:32, we've returned. As it relates to Appeal 21-10, do I have a motion?
I motion that we approve 21-10.
I will second 21-10 for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 21-10 has been approved. Appeal 21-11, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I will second 21-11. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 21-11 has been approved. 21-12, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I will second 21-12. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 21-12 has been approved. 21-13, do I have a motion?
21-13, motion to approve.
I will second that. All those in favor of 21-13 for approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 21-13 has been approved, and the board's going to exercise its right to not make a decision tonight. As I said very early on, we have up to 45 days to render any and all decisions. We're going to request a transcript to be able to review because there was an awful lot of testimony, an awful lot of confusing roads we went down, and so that one's not going to be decided tonight. All that being said, I will make a motion to adjourn. Seconded.
Second.
We are adjourned.